Welcome to More Than Words, a podcast about treating the whole child, brought to you by the Reading and Language Learning Center. I'm your host, Tristan, and today I'm joined by reading specialist Daniela Feldhausen to discuss what comes after a dyslexia diagnosis. I think that's a big question for people. So, hi, Daniela. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you doing, Tristan?
I'm good. We're excited to have you here to chat about this.
And I'm excited to be here.
Perfect. So let's start with an introduction. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Daniela. I'm the founder of Kids Up Reading Coaches. I was a lawyer in DC for about 25 years and then totally changed careers, went back to school, got a master's degree in special ed, did a bunch of specialized trainings for teaching kids to read. And that's what I do now. So we're now a group of 15 tutors. And we work with kids all across the country, although most of them by far are in the DC area.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is very cool. And also so fun, what a big career change. And
yeah,
it's cool to be able to have two separate things that were then so fulfilling to you in your life.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful. And actually having the background as lawyer has helped when I started up this new business. Gave me a little bit of confidence, I think, that I might not have otherwise had.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, all good. All
Wow.
good.
Very cool. Okay. So your practice, you said you started here in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So if people were going to find your tutors, where would they go to do that?
Where do they find us? Yeah. So we're actually located in Tucson, Arizona. So I lived in DC for about 25 years, raised my kids there. So I know the DC area really well. But then a while back, I moved out to Tucson. Now I kind of split my time between the two, more in Tucson, less in DC. The best way to find us is to go to our website. It is kidsupreadingcoaches.com. And when you go there, you'll see little buttons. One of them says schedule a meeting with Daniela. It's me. And the other one is just a contact us, which shoots an email to me. So either way, you'll find me just by going to kidsupreadingcoaches.com. We do all of our tutoring online. So regardless of whether you're in the DC area or somewhere else in the country, we can help your child become a fluent reader and a good speller and a confident student.
I love that. Okay, perfect. So your website, I'll throw in the show notes so that folks know how to contact you guys. And that's cool that it's all virtual, so anyone can reach you.
Yep, absolutely. And we can talk about some more about that later if you'd like.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. So let's hop into these questions. And I think I'd mentioned this to you, but the main audience that watches this is, mostly our clients, and those kids do have dyslexia for the most part. But I think it's always good to start with a definition, because someone new could be listening to this and be like, what is dyslexia? I thought it had something to do with your eyes, which if you don't mind telling us what
absolutely.
it is. Yeah.
No, I have the official definition from the International Dyslexia Association right here in front of me. But they basically say it's a learning disability, as we all know, that's neurobiological in origin. And we'll come back to that in a sec. But basically, it's struggling to read words, to decode words, as we sometimes say, and to encode words or to spell them. It's generally resulting from a problem with the phonological skills. And so going back to a sentence from a couple of minutes ago, this neurobiological piece is super important. So like you said, there's nothing wrong with these kids' eyes. Right. The issue is that their brain is wired a little bit differently from those of kids who don't have dyslexia. But it's nothing to be scared of. Like sometimes people say, oh, my brain's wired differently. Like, uh-oh. I'm like, no, it's okay. So we do these special phonological exercises that will literally rewire your child's brain. And it's super cool. They've done brain imaging, before and after doing these kinds of exercises. And there are marked differences between the before and after. So, yeah, these things that we do, these things that we can do to help kids with dyslexia are just absolutely incredible.
Oh my gosh, that is really cool. I think I cognitively knew that, but having the imagery of knowing that the brain literally changes is just so cool.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I know that one
Wow.
of the things we were going to talk about is, what's next once you have that diagnosis of dyslexia.
Right.
And that rewiring of the brain is a huge part of it. That's a
Right.
huge part of how you help these students.
Right. And so you mentioned the phonological like awareness portion of it. So
Mm-hmm.
what is
Yep.
that like the best treatment? What is the best treatment when you're looking for help for your kid?
Yeah, so you need to figure out, first of all, whether they have that phonological problem. Most kids with dyslexia have that phonological problem, but not
Mm-hmm.
all of them do. So, what you want to do is you want to find someone like us, a reading specialist, a practitioner, who will check your child's skills. You
Right.
want them to check their phonological skills, and you want them to check their phonics skills. Those aren't the only skills that go into becoming a good reader. There are also questions about maybe your working memory and your processing speed and your overall IQ and your vocabulary and your background knowledge. So there are lots of factors that go into becoming a good reader. But the
Mm-hmm.
ones that will really help you, the ones that those foundational skills of decoding the words and encoding the words, in order to be really strong at those, you need really good phonological skills and really good phonics skills.
Okay.
So I'm going to say most of the kids, probably 80% of the kids that we work with, have weak phonological skills. And by
Okay.
weak, I mean, when they've done the neuropsych testing, they might be weak or they might have been assessed as average, but you actually want really strong phonological skills. So even sometimes when kids come in with a testing showing average phonological skills, that's really not good enough. You really want their phonological skills to be very good in order to provide that solid foundation and understanding so that the phonics instruction can really work. So
Okay.
I'll actually go back a second. Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
jumping
please.
around here a little bit. Not everybody knows what these phonological skills are. So if you don't
I
mind, we'll
was
just
gonna
take a
ask.
step.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah. So the phonological bit it's related to this wiring of the brain. It's
Right.
understanding really how our reading and writing system works.
Okay.
So, at a very fundamental level, do you realize that words are made up of individual sounds?
Mm,
And that if you string sounds together in different combinations, you get different words.
right.
To somebody who's a fluent reader and a good speller, it's like, well, yeah, words are sounds and sounds are words. But to somebody who's not a fluent reader and a good speller, to one of these students with dyslexia, that's a revelation.
Yeah.
So you need to actually teach them that sounds combine to make different words and that words are composed of different sounds. So, for example, if you don't understand how this works and your teacher is telling you that AI makes A, for example, if you don't realize that you can put an N in front of that and an L at the end of that and come up with nail, then why is she standing up there telling me that AI makes A?
Oh
So
my
you
gosh.
really need to understand how the system works in order to then be able to learn those phonics patterns that you need in order to become a fluent reader.
Oh my gosh.
So the phonics, well, let's just talk about that for a sec because not
Yeah.
everybody knows exactly what phonics means.
Right.
Phonics is really that correspondence between the sounds and the letters.
Okay.
And in some languages, there's something close to a one-to-one correspondence. If you want this sound, you use this letter. If you see this letter, this is the sound it produces or
Right.
represents. English has what's called a much deeper orthography. So it's
Yeah.
actually a lot more complicated. And I'll just
Mm,
give you a couple examples. If you see an EA, for example, in a word, you've never seen the word before, you're sounding this word out for the first time and you bump into this EA, well,
mhm.
how would you pronounce that? Chances are it's going to be a long E. It's going to be an E, like seat. But it might not be. If you try an EA as a long E in that word that you're sounding out, and that E doesn't make any sense, the next thing you want to try is an because sometimes that
Mm,
EA is like head or threat.
right.
And if that doesn't work either, there's a third possibility. Sometimes that EA is pronounced like a long A, like great or break. So you need to learn that if you see an EA, first you try the E, then you try the and then you try the A.
Wow.
And then the flip side of that, for spelling purposes,
Right.
is okay, well, you're wanting to write a word that has, let's say, a long A in it. What
Hmm.
are all the different ways in English to spell a word that has a long A sound?
Oh my gosh. So many
And
ways.
there's so many ways. There's just an A by itself at the end of a syllable, like bacon or bagel.
Right.
There's the A magic E or A silent E, like
Right.
name or lake. There's an AI, like nail.
Right.
There's an AY, like play. There's the
Oh my gosh.
EA, like great, that we just talked about,
Right.
um, and a few other ones. And these are all patterns that kids need to learn. It's not, you can't just say, oh, it's a long A, therefore I'm going to spell it with X. Well, no,
Right.
actually, even at a very basic introductory level, there are at least 5 ways that are very common to spell that long A sound in English. And then there are a couple other less common ones. Think EA like they or EIGH like way.
Right.
So there are
Right.
lots more, but even just at a very basic level, you've got at least 5 different ways to spell all of those different long vowel sounds that we've got in English. And then we've got
Oh
those
my
other
gosh.
ones that aren't even long vowel sounds, right? Then
Right.
you've got the ah. There's AU and AW. You've got the oi, OI and OY. You've got the
Right.
ow, OU and OW. You've got the so there's a lot that you have to learn about those correspondences between the sounds and the letters. And that's what we call phonics. So, in
Oh
order
my
to
gosh.
become a really good reader, you need strong phonological skills and you need good knowledge of those phonics patterns. And oh, by the way, some good fluency work as well.
Right.
Those are really the 3 big pieces that you need in order to become really good at getting those words off the page, what we call
Right.
decoding, and putting those words back on the page, which we call encoding or spelling.
Oh my gosh. Wait, so okay, so this is so funny. I say this to like our therapists here all the time. But as someone who, reads as an adult, you don't realize how much work goes into like understanding what is in front of you until someone describes it, like describes how they're going to teach a child with dyslexia
Right.
how to read.
Right.
And I am always baffled by it because it's such it's such a wealth of knowledge that you don't realize you have, that you like almost take for granted as someone who like learned how to read easily, air quotes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
It's like magical. I don't,
Yeah.
it's insane to me.
Well, you may be one of those people who never needed to learn all of this explicitly. So
Right.
the research shows that about a third of all kids go into kindergarten already knowing how to read. Nobody taught them anything, they just kind of figured it out. About another third of the population, just teach them a little bit, teach them anything, and they'll figure it out. Just give them a little nudge and send them on their way, and they will figure the rest out. But a
Right.
full 40% or so of the population needs really good instruction to become a
Right.
fluent reader and a good speller. And
Wow.
that's a lot of people. And that
A
is
lot.
much bigger than the percentage of the population that has dyslexia. So if you think that dyslexia is somewhere between 5 and 20%, and the
Mhm.
ranges differ, but let's just say dyslexia is somewhere between 5 and 20%, but a full 40% of the population needs good instruction in order to be able to read. Now
Right.
you're starting to understand why we have so many kids in this country who can't read.
Yeah.
Schools aren't really equipped to teach all of these kids
Right.
to become fluent readers and good spellers. So some portion of that 40% need good instruction. And if they had good
Right.
instruction in school, they could figure it out. A portion of that population has dyslexia, and good instruction is great and they need it, but they need more of it than your typical student would need. So it's a
Right.
matter of having someone who's trained to teach children to read, and then
Right.
also having enough time for that instruction, because some kids are just going to need a whole lot more repetition and time with
Right.
the instruction than other kids will need. And so
Wow.
I'm going to say if the kids we work with, probably about half of them have a formal diagnosis of dyslexia. The other
Okay.
half don't. The other
Wow.
half, it's just parents saying, you know what, maybe they're talking on the soccer field. One mom's talking to another mom, my child can't read. Oh my gosh, what do I do?
Yeah.
They get referred to us, and we go ahead and work with the student. We don't need a formal diagnosis of dyslexia. It doesn't matter to us whether the student
Right.
is or isn't dyslexic, or does or doesn't have a diagnosis. It doesn't matter.
Right.
We're going to do screeners with the child up front to figure out where they're at in terms of their phonological skills and their phonics skills. And then we're going to teach them exactly what they need to know. It's
Right.
not sort of a one size fits all program. You start at the beginning, box number one, and you march your way through all these different steps.
Right.
Instead, what we do is we do screeners, we figure out what skills they're missing, and then we very explicitly target those skills that they need to
Yeah.
learn with really good instruction.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. It is such, like I said it before, I always find it so fascinating to talk about this because it makes me realize like these kiddos with dyslexia, they have to learn so much more than their peers or with who don't struggle to read, right? And it just makes you like realize how smart these kids are.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that surprises parents a lot when I tell them, so we work with kids from kindergarten all the way through high school. We even occasionally have college students.
Yeah.
One thing that I found fascinating, I was not expecting this when I first started this tutoring business. It turns out that the kids who don't get diagnosed with dyslexia until high school, so all the way through, nobody's really realized there was a problem, or they didn't realize the extent of the problem. And now
Right.
in high school, it's suddenly, okay, wait a minute, we've got an issue here. You'd think that because they're so much older, they've got that much more catching up to do. And oh my gosh, it must take forever, to
Right.
teach a 10th grader, a newly diagnosed 10th grader to read. And in fact, a lot of times, most of the times by far, those 10th graders and 11th graders, they'll get caught up more quickly than a student who's diagnosed in second grade. I
Interesting.
know, I know. I'm seeing the raised eyebrows. I know everybody's shocked. And I don't know that I have the research to show it. I can tell you sort of from my experience why I think
Right.
this is true,
Yeah.
although I've never seen a study on this. But I think what's going on is that if the student hasn't been diagnosed, if nobody's noticed this until they're in ninth grade or 10th grade or 11th or 12th, they've got a lot of other skills that
Yeah.
are supporting them as they're reading. They've got, let's say, a really good memory. They've got lots of background knowledge. They've got a strong vocabulary. They've got all these other skills that are helping them and have helped them sort of slide by or slide through, under the radar all this time.
Yeah.
All of those skills are going to help them as they're now learning to read, as they're
Yeah.
now learning to decode and encoding. And so that's my own personal theory. I think that's why 10th graders are often faster to get caught up than second graders. But like I
Right.
said, I don't have the research study to back that up. That's my belief, my assumption on
Right.
what's
What
going
you've
on there.
observed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that is very
Exactly.
interesting.
Yeah,
Huh. Because it is kind of like counterintuitive than to what
it
you would
is.
think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
So we have a very structured program. So we very, very explicitly teach these skills to our students.
Great.
You want to look for, when you're looking for a tutor or you're looking for help for your student, you want
Right.
really good instruction on the phonics side, and you want really good instruction on the phonological side. Those are kind of the two
Okay.
biggest components. On the phonics side, most people have heard of, or not most, many people have heard of Orton Gillingham.
Yeah.
And Orton Gillingham based phonics instruction is really, really good.
Okay.
And we use that as well. I think probably all reading instruction, all really good
Right.
reading instruction is using or should be using Orton Gillingham. The
Yeah.
piece that's sometimes missing, or often missing actually, is the phonological piece. So
Right.
not everybody who does Orton Gillingham also has a very strong phonological program that they're using. There are really two good ones out there. There's a program called Hegarty, which
Okay.
more and more elementary schools are using now. And then the other really good one is Kilpatrick.
Okay.
We use the Kilpatrick exercises. I find that the Hegarty exercises are really good for classroom instruction when you've got
Okay.
20, 25 plus kids. If you're
Right.
doing one-on-one remediation, The Kilpatrick exercises actually work much better because you can
Okay.
really focus in on the particular skill that that student needs help with.
Right.
And you can very quickly, sort of skip through the ones that they don't need help with because they've already got those skills down. So for targeted remediation, I find Kilpatrick works much better than Heggerty, but they're both excellent programs.
Okay. Yeah. And I was going to ask, I'm glad you brought up Orton Gillingham because that is like a lot of times what parents get referred to, but they don't like necessarily know
Mhm.
what that means, or they'll hear like OG and it's like, what's
What
that?
is that? Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So do you know the history of like Orton Gillingham or why it is a good methodology?
I mean, it's very, very um, detailed and specific, and it really lets you focus in on those individual phonics patterns.
Right.
So, and that's really what these kids need. They need this kind of instruction that I was describing before, like, oh, if you see an EA, it could be an E, or it could be an F, or it could be an A. And if you want
Right.
to write a long E or a long I, these are all the different ways you can do it. And Orton Gillingham provides a framework, if you will, for doing that.
Right.
So the less good instruction that some kids unfortunately are still getting at school is more sort of a holistic view, if you will. So
Okay.
back, I'm a little bit older than you are, quite a bit older than you are. So back when I was a kid, we were taught to read using phonics, and then our country moved in a different direction, moved towards something called balanced literacy or whole
Mm,
language or three cueing system. That was proven in the research not to work. But
okay.
still, a lot of the teachers who are teaching right now were trained in that methodology. The
Mm,
research now shows that really that doesn't work, and we need to be training all of our teachers and teaching all of our students using what's now referred to as the science of reading or structured literacy.
right.
And as a country, we're moving in the right direction. So pretty much all the states have passed dyslexia legislation, and everyone's supposed to be testing kids now, kindergarten or first grade, for dyslexia, and they're supposed to be retraining their existing teachers, and new teachers coming in are supposed to be getting the training. So, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
But I think right now there's still not enough teachers out there who really know how to provide this really good instruction
Right.
that 40% of the population needs.
Yeah. That's so crazy. Okay, so the Orton Gillingham is what we're looking for if when we're looking for treatment options and the phonological awareness piece.
Yeah. So
Um,
when you're choosing a tutor, you want to make sure that they're doing Orton Gilling for phonics and they're
right.
using a really strong phonological program. The
Okay.
two good ones are Heggerty and Kilpatrick,
Perfect. Okay.
and we do the Kilpatrick. Yeah.
Yeah. So that like treatment process, how long does that normally take? I know that's kind of like
Not
a it depends question, but
Yeah, it is, but everybody always asks it, which is totally understandable. If I were
yeah.
the parent, I would want to know too. Um, what I generally tell parents, I mean, I try to postpone the conversation a little bit until we've done the screeners. Because
Right.
once we've done the screeners, then I have a good sense of where your student is starting and
Hmm.
how many skills, how much do they need to learn in order to get caught up to their grade level, in order to get caught up to their class. Obviously,
Right.
the more they need to learn, the longer it's going to take. But it also
Right.
depends on a bunch of other factors. So overall, in general, we generally get students caught up to grade level in somewhere between 4 and 9 months.
Oh wow.
But
Okay.
yeah, so it's what we do what's called high intensity tutoring. So
Yeah.
this is not tutoring once a week or twice a week. That really just doesn't work for the most part.
Right.
You need to be doing this 3, 4, or sometimes even 5 times a week.
Wow.
During the school year, it's generally 3 or 4 times a week. And then
Hmm.
over the summer, most of our families will do it 5 days a week. You want to get your student caught up as quickly as possible, right?
Yeah.
If they're still in the younger grades, if they're still in first grade, second grade, third grade, if you can get them caught up quickly, then their teacher in school, assuming he or she's providing good instruction, can take over and teach them the rest of those phonics patterns. You don't need
Okay.
us to teach your child all of the phonics patterns. You need us to get your child caught up in terms of the phonics patterns and understanding how the system works in terms of the phonological skills, and then their classroom teacher can take over. So
Okay.
you're much better off doing this kind of super intensive work in first grade rather than waiting until second or third grade. Or if they're already in third grade, better do it now, than wait a couple more years. So if
Right.
you can do it earlier, it's better. But we have taught many, many, many middle and high schoolers to read.
Yeah.
So it is still
Wow.
totally possible to do it afterwards, but you can save yourself some time and money. If you already know in first grade that there's a problem, get the intervention now. Don't wait a couple more years. Because if you wait until the end of second grade, there are all those second grade patterns we have to teach your child. Whereas if they're in
Ooh.
first grade, we just have to teach them the first grade patterns in order to get them caught up.
So in terms of school, like, do you let the teachers know, like, we just got this diagnosis or we're noticing this problem and, we're going to go ahead and like get treatment done somewhere? Like, do you tell their teachers this?
So if I'm the parent, I would, in most cases, yes, I would tell the school.
Okay.
Um, then you'll have the discussion with the school about what kinds of services they can offer. If you've got a diagnosis of dyslexia, you have the right to get an IEP, so individualized education program. Your child will get special services through the special education team or exceptional education
Mhm.
team at your school. Um, the thing to know about that is that that's not actually so that's going to help, right? It's going to help
Right.
your student learn. They're going to set goals, and maybe the goals are to learn this, and this phonics pattern, in the next
Right.
9 weeks. So you'll set goals, and hopefully your student will achieve those goals. The problem is your child isn't actually going to become a fluent reader through special ed at school.
Mm.
Even if you've got the best trained teacher in the world, there aren't enough hours in the week. There aren't enough
Right.
minutes in your IEP. There aren't enough hours in the week, to get the kids the amount of instruction that they need.
Yeah.
So by all means, talk to the special ed team.
Right.
Consider putting an IEP in place. Consider getting your student that extra help in school. Just
Right.
know that's not enough. It's going to help, but it's not enough. I mean, ask the
Okay.
special ed teacher, how often have they graduated kids out of special ed because they taught them to read?
Yeah.
And the answer is likely to be zero or not
Zero.
very many.
Right.
You'll generally hear, well, really the only kids who graduate out of special ed are the ones who get outside reading tutoring. Those are the
Yeah.
kids who graduate out of special ed.
Wow.
So it's good as long as you've got a special ed teacher who knows how to do it. It's great. That will help. Just know that it's not going to solve the problem. It's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So in this timeline, right, we've got the diagnosis or the noticing something is amiss. Um, we've picked a treatment plan, right? We've found a tutor or a therapist that has a good treatment plan for our kiddo. We've maybe told the school to get an IEP. Now, what do we think about doing things at home? Is it helpful to, kind of keep the intervention going at home, or is it too much? Like, what's the deal there?
Again, it really depends. I'll say
Okay.
most of the families we work with do not do anything on their own, with the student. Every once in a while, we'll have a family that asks for homework.
Right.
We don't even give homework. I mean, generally, like the instruction we do is designed to teach the kids to read. So parents should not need to do anything, and very few of the
Okay.
parents do. Every once in a while, we'll get a parent who just really wants to be part of this process.
Right.
Um, it's hard unless you've got the training in our language that all of these phonics patterns. You're
Hmm.
probably not going to be able to teach them to a student. If you really wanted to do something outside of school, you could do the phonological exercises with them. So you
Okay.
could participate. So we often have parents in the background watching, sitting in on the
Right.
lesson. So you can watch if you want. You don't have to, but if you want, you're welcome to sit in and you can watch, see how we're doing those phonological exercises with your child. And then
Right.
you can do them outside of the lessons. And that will help them get caught up on the phonological side and get them understanding how the system works more quickly if they're doing an extra 10 minutes a day, let's say, of these phonological exercises.
Right.
There's special hand gestures and things that you'll want to use with them to help
Okay.
kids, but talk to your tutor if you're working with us and we'll show you, or you can just, like I said, participate in some of the sessions, be in the background.
Right.
And you'll see how we do those hand gestures to help a student get over that hurdle of, what are you asking me to do? I don't
Right.
understand how that is. So, or maybe the way we do it is that we teach your child until they get it, but then you do maybe another 10 minutes a day with your student to really solidify it more quickly than it would if it was
Okay.
only happening during our lessons.
Right.
So I'm going to say, if you want to help, phonological exercises would be good to talk to your tutor about.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely helpful because I feel like people always are like, well, what do I like? You want to be an active helper in your own kid's journey.
Sure.
And sometimes like, the treatment is going to work, but you feel like you aren't like doing things. So that's always like nice to hear
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah. No,
explanation.
it's absolutely an option. I will say that not very many of our families do it,
Right.
but it is an option. Absolutely.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I think that was my
Sure.
like last question for you, but I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to throw in there.
Really just to tell people to visit our website. There's a lot of information on our website about dyslexia and about
Yeah.
how to treat dyslexia.
Right.
So go take a look there. There's some really good information. You can always reach out to me, via the website, and I'm happy to answer any and all questions. I'm happy to schedule a meeting, talk to you over Zoom. Oh, that was the thing. We were going to talk about Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Oh,
all of
yes.
our so all of our instruction is over Zoom.
Right.
Because we do this high intensity tutoring, meaning we usually tutor kids 3 or 4 times a week during the school year or 5 times
Right.
a week in the summer. That's really hard for many families to fit into their schedules. Between the
Yeah.
parents' schedules and the students' schedule and after school activities, that's really tough. And it's easier if you can do it from the comfort of your own home over a computer.
Yes.
Um, so some parents will say, oh, no, 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 my student hated Zoom during the pandemic. I don't want to
Yes.
do this.
Right.
And what I'll tell them is that this is actually really different from what was happening
Yes.
during the pandemic. I mean, in the pandemic, it was some poor teacher trying to corral 20 or more boxes on a screen. Nobody can
Yeah.
do that. I can't do that.
No.
That's an impossible task. This is
Right.
really different because it's one-on-one.
Yep.
So if the student is distracted, and I'm going to say probably about half of the students we work with have an ADHD diagnosis. There's a
Oh,
huge
yeah.
overlap between ADHD and dyslexia.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the tutor will notice if your child is distracted and can bring them back in. And if your student needs to move around or, get a glass of water or do this, that's fine. That is not a problem at all.
Right.
So we can, and there are lots of games, and it's actually really interactive. And we
Yeah.
can do a lot of activities that are a whole lot of fun for kids using some of the technology. So, for example, I have a document camera here in front of my screen, and I can
Ooh.
use that
Yeah.
to display the Orton Gillingham blending board that I have on my
Right.
desk. So I'm flipping through cards and getting kids lots and lots of practice with whichever phonics pattern it is that we're working on that day with the
Yeah.
cards that I have sitting here on my desk because I've got a separate camera that displays that.
Yeah.
I can, so with the different cameras and the different technology, it's a wonderful way of teaching kids to read. It works beautifully.
Yeah.
But parents sometimes are still concerned and they're like, yeah, I'm not so sure this is going to work for my student. And so what I'll tell them is, you know what, just try it for a week.
Yep.
Try it out, try the Zoom thing for a week. If at the end of the week you think it's not working, that's fine. You can walk away. We won't charge you for the week. Not a problem. I've
Yeah.
made that offer probably hundreds of times at this point. Not a
Yeah.
single family has ever walked away after a week.
Oh
Not
my gosh.
one. So
Oh my gosh.
try it out. You will be surprised. But
Yeah.
I will say I am not able to convince everybody to give it a shot. But if you do give it a shot, we'll get there.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but you have to be willing to try.
Willing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that because we have the same thing happen with us, where parents come in and they're like, well, we do virtual services as well. Right. But
Mhm.
they say like, we did virtual during the pandemic. My kid hated it. There's no way. And you're like,
Yeah.
it's a
This is,
very different, very,
yeah,
very different setup
it
here.
is. Yeah,
So yeah, thank you for touching on that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess people should go to our website. It's
Yeah.
kidsupreadingcoaches.com and reach out to me if they have any questions.
Perfect. Well, yeah, like I said, I'll make sure that is in the show notes so people can reach out to you. And thank you so much for being here and chatting with us about this. This was very helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you,
Yeah,
Tristan.
same here. Of course. Thank you so much to the audience for listening. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a little rating and review. It helps other folks find the podcast, and we'll chat with you next time.